Hey everyone, I'm just going to continue with my first video here about investing. And I was kind of talking about how it's really important that you can save money every month, like $500 or $1,000 if you can. I mean, if it's only 1 or 200, it's still fine, especially, if you're young and your income is lower or whatever. But it's really important to build the habit of investing, so you need to open an account with, for example, Fidelity if you're in America, or Charles Schwab. Citibank has an account. um, I think E-Trade, Robinhood, these brokerages, not bank accounts. And it's great if you can transfer every month, especially on the same day. For example, when you get your paycheck, maybe a few days after. And it's really important about your mindset. Now, a lot of people, when they're in their 20s, maybe even their 30s, they don't really consider investing. They're like, oh, I'm just going to have my job and have fun and spend money and buy stuff and travel and whatever. Maybe if I save some money, I'll put it in the bank account. Maybe they want to save to buy a house or something, possibly a business. But saving, it's just kind of like off the radar. It's like off the menu. It's like when they watch the news and they're like, the stock market went down. And they're like, oh no, investing is risky. So this is where where we can get into the top 3 to 5 reasons that people don't invest. Because when I started investing in Fidelity's 500 S&P tracker fund, FXAIX, I started investing in that because it has a very low expense ratio, which is like the fee of like 0.015%, which means for every $100,000 you invest, they're going to just charge you $15. So imagine, you have like $10,000. It's like $1.50 a year, which is basically nothing. And so yeah, when I started investing, and as the months and years went by and my money was growing, I was like, man, this is great, this is cool, and I was like really excited. And so I would be at a party or some social situation, maybe on a bus stop, and I'd just start talking with someone, and I'd be like, yeah, you should invest. And so some people would say, I need to do more research. I don't have enough knowledge. I don't know enough. And when I started investing, and still now, imagine, say I started when I was 25, now I'm 41, that's like 16 years later, I could still say I need to do more research because I just know a little bit about it. I have some basic ideas. But the truth is, you don't need to do more research. You can do research for like 2 or 3 hours. You just sit down and do it. And then you can start. Once you have a basic understanding, you can totally start. Because it's sort of like, if you tell yourself you need to do more research, you won't do the research and you'll never do it. So this is just kind of some kind of excuse for someone. It's sort of like if you borrow like $100 from your neighbor, and every time you see your neighbor and you're like, yeah, I'll pay you back later, you're never going to pay them back. It's sort of like the next time you see them, if you just hand them the money, you'll pay them back. But if you say you're going to pay them back, you'll never do it. Okay? So the next thing is, people are like, I don't have enough money. And then the next week you see that person with like a new car, or they are going to Paris, or they have a new handbag, or whatever. They absolutely have enough money, but they just don't want to spend it on investing. They just want to buy stuff, because they don't want to invest and build money for their future. The next one is like, oh, it's too risky, it's scary. If I invest, like the stock market could crash and go to zero and like never come back. And there is risk. Some years the market goes up, some years the market goes down. There have been some crashes, like when COVID happened in 2020 in March, there was like this crash. But then the US government pumped a bunch of money into the economy and it kind of just went back up. It wasn't very noticeable. But then in 2008, 2009, there was like a big subprime housing market crash, and the S&P 500, I think maybe went down 50%. I mean, not 40% or some like huge amount, And so I remember I was on the BART train subway sitting next to this guy in a suit. And he was like, yeah, I lost like half of my money. And he was like really depressed. And I'm imagining he had like at least $1 million and he lost like 500,000, and I was like, man. But then, in 2008 and 9 crash, like in about a year, it just kind of bounced back up. And actually, since that 2008, 2009 crash, the market has gone up like 5 times or something, like the best time in the history of the stock market. There was also the 2000 dot-com crash. And some of those companies, I think, went bankrupt. But that was like when the internet started and everyone was going crazy and there was a lot of hype. But, certain companies like Cisco and Microsoft and Amazon, those big companies, they didn't go bankrupt. So the thing is that there's all these random facts and figures. But they've said that for any 20-year period in the S&P 500, you've never lost money. So it's like, maybe in a 5-year period, it might go down or whatever. Like into 2000 crash, I think it was like 3 years in a row, sometimes even 4 years in a row it was down, and then it would go up. There's this chart that shows you every year how much the S&P 500 made or lost since it started. I think it started in like 1957 or something like that, officially. So there is some risk, but the thing is, and like these financial experts like Ben Graham and Warren Buffett, you might not know these names, but they're Jack Vogel, who started Vanguard with the low cost index funds. Like if you watch YouTube videos from these financial gurus, you'll get a lot of great information. Like for example, Warren Buffett recommends for a normal person like me and maybe you, who's not like some financial expert or maybe like a vice president at Microsoft, that they should just buy a low-cost index fund like Fidelity's FXAIX and just keep your money in there for a really long time, 20 or 30 years, reinvest the dividends and add to it as much as you can and try to never withdraw. Then you won't pay taxes. You'll just pay taxes on the dividends. And then after, 30 or more years, depending on how much you put in, how well the market did, you'll have a lot of money. That's like what Warren Buffett and a lot of the financial gurus say. And on the flip side, if you keep your money in the bank account, inflation, which ranges from 2 or 3% a year, will actually erode. It will make your bank account money go smaller. So you will lose money because, the cost of a candy bar 20 years ago, was a whole lot cheaper, right? So the prices of everything goes up. That's as inflation, purchasing power. You'll actually lose money. You won't lose like 50%, like if the market crashes, but of course the market will go back up. It always has. But you'll lose money, but there's also another way you'll lose money, which is called opportunity cost. Now, opportunity cost is just the cost of another opportunity that would have been better. So it's like if you put like $10,000 in the bank for 20 years, and then at the end of 20 years, you have the $10,000, right? So you didn't like lose that 10,000, but everything else is much more expensive. So for $10,000 in 20 years, maybe it's only worth like 15,000 of what it would be. But if you had put that same $10,000 in FXAIX, which tracks the S&P 500, which is 500 of America's like large successful companies, then in 20 years, that 10,000, I would have to do it on a compound interest calculator, but it could be, like 5 times more. or something. It could be worth like 50,000, right? So it's like, it's a huge difference. And they have these compound interest calculators. There's one from MoneyChimp that's like really cool.